Uh, Time for another action-packed Dallas City Council meeting here on Monday, November 21st, 2022. Welcome to our 1936 City Hall. We're glad you came. Secretary, call the roll.
Council President Shelley.
Here. Councilor Briggs.
Here.
Councilor Collins.
Present.
Councilor Crawford.
Here.
Councilor Fitzgerald.
Here.
Councilor Hahn.
Here.
And Councilor Woods. I will note that Councilor Verdon is excused.
Right. Thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We turn now to introductions, recognitions, and proclamations. We do have an introduction this evening. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Dalton. So we do have one introduction tonight, and I will turn the time over to our Economic and Community Development Director, Charlie Mitchell.
Thanks, Brian. Good evening, Mayor, members of the Dallas City Council. I'm pleased to introduce to you tonight Lexi Murphy, who's the newest member of my department. She joined us about 3 weeks ago as a code service specialist in our code services division. And I'm particularly excited because with Lexi's hire, my department is now fully staffed. Lexi is a longtime where'd that come from? Longtime Dallas resident, graduated from Dallas High School, came to us most recently from the city of Salem. So we stole one back to this side of the river. So Lexi Murphy.
Welcome. You're in a very important department for us. Time for public comment. This is where anyone can come forward and visit with us for up to 5 minutes on any topic you like. Please give us your name and your address when you come forward. And who would like to visit with us this evening for 5 whole minutes? Up to 5 whole minutes. Brevity is the soul of wit, so less is good too. Ann Hurd normally comes forward right away, but she can't make it tonight, and she sends her regrets for that and says there isn't all that much going on at the Aquatic Center anyway. So somehow they will make it through the night. Anybody on the line there?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Off we go to the consent agenda, and that's composed of 3 items: the approval of the November 7th City Council meeting, also the November 7th City Council work session minutes, and the October 2022 financial report, which has quite a bit of information. Anybody want to withdraw anything to talk about it? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve it. Made by Bill, classically, and Michael seconds it. Okay, any further discussion on this weighty topic? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Thank you. Off we go to reports and comments from the mayor and council members. Anybody have anything for us tonight? Michael?
It's a good time. I'll probably remind us at the end also for all the councilors, make sure that we get our reviews in of our city manager by this coming Friday would be preferred. That way we have time for Emily to get them to us so that we can go through them and organize them.
Okay, Friday. Anybody else? Anything else? It's the Christmas season. Things are happening.
And thank you, Bill, for getting yours in.
Things are happening. We lit up the tops of the building, so y'all see that. We raised funds. Jacobs Engineering, which works with us a lot, donated $3,000 to help with that. So thank them. And Willamette Valley Fiber and the city and Hayden Homes were the main donors to put those lights up this year. We actually got a little bit more than they cost this year, so we could turn some money over for next year. Anybody want to donate anything, come see me. All right, nothing? On we go then to reports from the city manager and staff. Brian.
All right, thank you, Mayor Dalton. So tonight we have 4 items. The first is our TMDL implementation plan report for 2022. And Gary, do you want to introduce our speaker?
Yes, our speaker tonight is Elizabeth Sack, who is our TMDL consultant. So Elizabeth, come on.
Here. Mayor Dalton, city council members and staff, thank you so much for having me this evening. The lights look fabulous. I saw them coming into town. Am I?
Yes, so you'll just have to open your presentation there. It's,
I've been working with staff since about 2021 fall. And I know that the TMDL implementation plan is not new.
Could I interrupt?
Sure.
For those of you who are naive about such things, TMDL stands for Total Maximum Daily Load. And we're talking tonight about the implementation plan, TMDL. Thank you.
And I'm going to give them a whole lot more information. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
By way of background, I was in public service for local government. Most of my career, I worked for the city of Kaiser, and you also got me from the city of Salem. And recently, and I retired. And then the Mercury TMDL came to light, and it was time for me to come out and help some folks out with that. So here I am. You've already addressed a portion of the Mercury TMDL, and a final came down from the federal government. And so in reviewing what Dallas needed to do for the new requirements, we decided that the best course of action was to revise the plan in its entirety to meet the conditions of the new regulations and just bring everything up to speed a little bit. So we're going to look at a little PowerPoint presentation that I put together and then give you an opportunity to.
you'll just
ask
have
some
to,
questions.
I apologize. You'll just have to click the little file box there on the bottom of the screen. You have a mouse
Oh. There,
down to your left, right there.
there.
And then there's a USB drive on your left. It says USB drive. Nope. And there you go.
Okay. So. From here. And from here. So there you are, City of Dallas TMDL implementation plan. Okay, here's your quick review. TMDL, total maximum daily load. What the meaning of that? A TMDL describes the amount of a pollutant that a waterway can receive without exceeding water quality standards. In this case, mercury is elevated, and therefore it limits fish consumption. So mercury is retained within fat cells, and basically it stays there. The TMDL implementation plan is a regulatory document. It's good for 5 years and includes activities, milestones, and a description of how Dallas will meet those regulations. So this is just a snapshot of where we've been, where you all have been. You submitted your plan in 2008 as you were required to. Your plan addresses bacteria, temperature, and mercury. You revised the plan as you're required to do. And then you were required to change it to meet these new mercury regulations, which you did. You submitted the plan on time, and we're currently working on implementing that plan. So everything is going along fine. Just a reminder, stormwater is the water that runs, is the precipitation or snow melt ice that runs off of any impervious surface. And I've got up there at the top, development of any size results in the need for stormwater management. And I put that in there because if you think about it, even if you put a small patio or deck or something on the back of your house or wherever, that's still a piece of land can't absorb water like it does naturally, and somehow it has to eventually be managed. So what does the revised plan mean for Dallas? Some new activities, some new ordinances specifically geared towards construction activities. And those are things that DEQ has really raised the bar on. You have an opportunity to change and refine the program, just as we did in this last year. More community education and engagement, educating your public. So when we put together these BMPs, I always want to make sure that you know that I'm not just grabbing things from out of the air, that I think about this. So first of all, we select best management practices, BMPs, that meet regulations, because City of Dallas doesn't want to have an argument with DEQ. We choose BMPs that make sense for Dallas. We're not going to choose BMPs that make sense for somewhere in Southern Oregon, for example. BMPs that are effective and then that are implementable. You know, you don't have all the staff in the world, you don't, but you do a really good job with what you have. So that's how we designed this. This was just sort of my methodology and what was given to DEQ. Your original plan was set up by task, and so, and what the original description was, and what we said to DEQ is, here was the original task, and if it was changed, then I referenced that. So they had a real clear picture of where you went, what we kept, and so on. And this is just an idea of how that best management practice list looks in the TMDL implementation plan. So under PI, that is public involvement. That's what we're doing right now. And you see annual presentation to the city council. Boom, we've just checked that off. That's done for the year. 6 minimum control measures are required in your implementation plan. The first is public education. You're doing a lot of that already. You've got information on the website, but we'll kind of be tailoring that and targeting it to different groups in the community. Here's some of your very own, I think these are Girl Scouts. Planting a tree. This is public involvement because you used a community group. Illicit discharge and detection. This will require an ordinance that prohibits illegal dumping. And ordinance work always gets a little lengthy, but I've got lots of good examples to shoot from. In my experience, nobody creates their own ordinance from scratch unless you're Portland. Construction site runoff. I mentioned this before. I think probably some of you are aware that the state regulates projects that are an acre or larger. Now you will be required, Dallas will be required to regulate sites that disturb soil that are on half an acre or larger. So this is a big one. But again, you see ordinance here. There's a lot of good programs to follow out there. And then finally, post-construction control in new and redevelopment. And this is, I don't know why they had to make this so wordy. You're doing this to some extent. The top picture is what you want your post-construction features probably to look like. But you have started to do that. You've tried to do that. Here is a photo of one of these structures in town. It needs to be retrofitted, but it's much easier to retrofit something that's already there than to have to create it from the gate. So again, you've been working in the right direction. We just need to fine tune it a little bit. And then good housekeeping. Again, you're doing all these things. Street sweeping, catch basin cleaning, things along those lines. Regulatory requirements, you have to meet annual goals that are in the plan and produce an annual report each year. You have to complete everything that's in that implementation plan within 5 years. And at the end of the 5-year period, you have to update the plan and continue to implement the plan. Does it go away is a question that I often get. This is a long-term program, and in reality, the chances are it will continue to evolve, but it will never, really go away. Next steps, this adopt the plan by resolution. I put this in here, but I have to do a little bit more research. Gary, do you know if your original plan was adopted, or does anybody know? If I suspect that it was, and if DEQ says that that's fine, then you don't have to adopt it again. Training for staff will happen this year. We'll coordinate with other agencies when possible, because again, why recreate the wheel? Review appropriate local ordinances from other agencies, implement the measures, complete really comprehensive record keeping for all measures and activities. This is really, really an important one. And then some dates there that you have to adhere to. And with that, anybody have questions for me?
Questions?
All right.
Go ahead.
So are you saying we do not have an illicit discharge ordinance in the city at this time?
We do, it may not be, we'll have to look at it. We do.
You do, but it doesn't meet the regulations.
So is the regulation that any illicit discharge into the stormwater conveyance system that is not composed entirely of stormwater, like washing your car?
Yes, but good question. So that language comes from the phased permits. So the larger communities, Salem, Portland, Eugene, that language comes from the regulations in this permit. Everything that's in your TMDL implementation plan is grounded in this permit. And so the way that you worded it is, I didn't check it word for word, but that is the description of an illicit discharge. Now, is somebody telling you to get somebody to go around and bust people that are washing their cars? No, you're going to post something on the website that gives people an opportunity or an incentive to go to the car wash, or gives them, say, wash it on the lawn. And so you're going to do the best that you can when it comes down to that level. DEQ is not going to bust you for somebody that's washing their car in the driveway.
You mentioned lawns. What about sprinkler systems that shoot into the street? Or overspray into the street?
Yeah, that's not, that wouldn't really be considered a stormwater. However, if there was enough, I mean, you can stretch this stuff as much as you want. If there was enough flow for long enough time, it could potentially pick up pollutants on the street and run them into the storm drain. But a sprinkler running is not stormwater. Stormwater originates from precipitation.
There's probably not a sprinkler system in this town that doesn't overshoot on the sidewalks, driveways and streets.
Yeah. And you charge for drinking water. You know, so the rate, that's a ratepayer thing.
I don't understand.
Oh, well, so what we're talking about is stormwater. So it's drinking water that comes out of a sprinkler.
It's
And,
drinking water you use to wash your car with too.
but that's not why car washing would be regulated. It would be because of the dirt and oil and things on your car.
So is the process for us to have an opportunity to weigh in on the rules and regulations before they're implemented, or is it done outside of this purview?
No, so you'll have the opportunity when looking at ordinances and the adoption of ordinances. What's that? Yeah, and the adoption of the plan as well. You'll have the opportunity to look at that, consider it, recommend revisions or wordsmithing that you feel is needed.
And that's what's referenced in the adopt the plan by resolution prior to September 30, 2023. That's the plan we're talking about.
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions? Kristen?
So it's my understanding thank you for providing this for us ahead of time so we could actually
Sure.
read it. And I had to look up some stuff. But it's my understanding that is specifically regarding the illicit discharge detection and elimination, that whether or not we do have this as part of our plan isn't an option. It's the how we choose to have it as part of our plan that's the option.
That's correct.
Okay.
And DEQ sets the standard. In reading that language, as your city attorney will tell you, that, it's legal language. And so we're looking at specifically what they're saying, not someone else's interpretation of it.
Okay, thank you.
Have one. So the biggest change that we're seeing in this cycle, is that on the mercury side?
Yes.
And what was it not regulated before because it was low and now it's high? What changed?
No, it was regulated before. And what happened when the original TMDL was issued for the Willamette, which was in 2006. DEQ sent the order to, or sent the TMDL to the EPA. They approved it, sent it back, said, mercury, you haven't provided the right justification for mercury. DEQ said, we'll get you the correct numbers and we will come back with a final. And that's what this is. So you had regulations before. Now there's actually a hard percentage out there, but it doesn't really, it's the really sciencey part of it that I probably can't adequately explain to you. You're not testing. Your contribution of mercury to the system is not, it's viewed as a portion of every other TMDL contributor. So the goal is for all the TMDL implementation plan holders to cumulatively reduce mercury in the Willamette Basin by 75%.
And are we going to have troubles meeting that?
That's, no,
And then.
well, I don't know.
Do we know? where-
You are not. You're not responsible for it. All you're responsible for doing is meeting what DEQ says you have to do, and they're not giving you a number. And following the plan that we've given them.
And what's our biggest contribution? Do we know where it's coming from?
I would guess that, well, honestly, the biggest contributor is from air deposition. But runoff from
Sure.
disturbed soils is the biggest contributor. Mercury particles bind to soil and runoff is carried to the waterway. As I said, mercury stays in the system for hundreds and hundreds of years. It does not go away. And I think you would probably all have heard tales of mercury poisoning. So what do? We let people know what, what products they might have that still have mercury in them and where they can recycle them. And then teach them things that they can do around the house. And then address the development community. And they've been doing this for many years now, and they know what they're doing. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about how the TMDL will address education and outreach to the general community? We know that education is the most cost-effective management. The number of people who don't know, hey, if you rinse off your lawnmower, it feels like it's not a big deal. It feels like it's just water from your hose and grass, but actually it's oil. So how are we going to do that?
So one of the things that I changed in your plan is to make sure that your outreach goes to target audiences. So that developers are getting a resource kit of what they need to know about a disturbed site. They know where the resources are from DEQ, where to buy erosion control materials, so on and so forth. If you're a homeowner, we're going to address you separately. If you have a business, we're going to address you separately, so that it's more targeted. And I use that word, more targeted outreach. So it's not just like this applies to everybody, where you can really look and say, hey, I've got a business. Well, what is it that I should be doing? And then getting the kids involved.
One last. And the biggest change on the development side is the going from the 1 acre to the half acre. Is that correct? As far as what we're managing, because
Let me
we've been
think.
managing.
Let me think before I answer that. 1 acre to a half acre, but you have a flexibility in that. I'll just leave that for another day, but sometimes making that hard half acre isn't what you want to go for. You want to be looking at what's right for Dallas. So there may be a more creative way. The other thing that you'll have to do is post-construction. And that will involve your engineers, and for bigger projects, subdivision size, small subdivision size, where instead of running your stormwater out to the street, you're going to need to put it in the ground or look for a way to mediate it. And you're not going to have to do this tomorrow. But that one of the last slides there that I showed you, the right of way with the planter strip. So that was, you want me to go back?
And that's
Well,
where education comes
sorry.
in.
if you have a planter strip along the road and you have a couple at each corner,
Rain gardens.
yeah, rain gardens. So you're gonna incorporate something like that, or a roadside swale, or a French drain for your roof. And there's actually language in your TMDL implementation plan that talks about the use of underground injection control devices, which you have some soil in the city that will take the water. And it's a great way to manage stormwater. There is none of this if you put it in the ground. So we'll be looking at opportunities there. Did that answer your question?
I was just making sure we educated. I developed. So
Okay. Yeah,
We're very familiar with pre-treatment.
so,
And I just wanted to make sure that as we're going along, because there are lots that do qualify as half acre. And so I didn't know if we were having to manage those on some of the education portion of it. And then it's like rain gardens, you said education, and you've touched on education. Rain gardens are a tough thing to manage
they are,
because the homeowners will go in and rip them out and fill them.
yes, they are. And so what, we can have an offline, discussion about this, but doing something subdivision scale for the whole system. And there's a lot of creative systems out there. Other things?
I'm not seeing them.
Thank you all very much. Did I touch on everything there? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks. And everyone have a lovely holiday.
You
Thank
too.
you, Office Chair. I've got new knees.
Okay, back we go.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the next item that we have is on page 42 of your packet, and it is the process to fill council vacancies. So as the council is aware, Councilor Rod Dunham resigned from the city council earlier this month. And in addition to that, we'll have a change in our mayor in January from one of our council members who was recently elected, Councilor Woods. And so that will also create a second then vacancy on the council. And so as it's described in the charter, section 29, vacancies in elective offices in the city shall be filled by a vote of the majority of the incumbent members of the council. Other than that, there's no defined process. So some of you have been through this process to fill a vacancy before. And so it's really kind of up to you on how you would like to have that process filled. I did note two of the ways that the processes for filling council vacancies has been done in the past. One of those has been to do a solicitation for applications for people to apply. We then interview them as a council, and then you select through a vote to fill that vacancy. So that's been one way that we've done that recently. The other is to look back at the most recent general election and to see who was the next highest vote getter. You could always do that, but the last election that we just had, we had 4 vacancies and 4 candidates. So there is no next kind of person up. So I wouldn't advocate going that way, or else you're going to find yourself putting a write-in candidate that maybe got 5 votes or something. But again, those are two of the ways that we've done it in the past. You can choose a different way. You could have, the council president find someone and just put that person before you for a vote. You could, I don't know, come up with any way of doing it. So it's really your ball of wax to mold and come up with how you want to pursue that process. There is only one meeting before the end of the calendar year, and that's December 5th, just a few weeks away. I don't think we have adequate time if you were to select the solicitation process, get applications in, and then bring the candidates in to interview them and vote by December 5th. I just don't think you have adequate time. And so you can certainly determine the process today. We can start to implement that, and then wait until the January 3rd meeting to take action on those vacancies. So that's where staff will just leave the conversation now in your hands to decide how you want to move forward.
Anybody? Out here in
Well, the other thing, can we postpone this until after the new council takes their seats?
Sure. Yeah.
Without making that decision right
Oh.
now. We only have one council meeting left
Mhm.
by the end of the year.
Yeah, you can. You don't have to make any decision on this tonight. The charter does say that you shall fill the vacancies, so you have to get that done at some point. But if you want to wait until the new council, including the 2 new council members that were elected, are here, you can do that.
The difficulties to be aware of is that the charter also requires any action by the council be made on a vote of a majority of the whole number of the council. That number is 9. So if you have a 7-member council, it still takes 5 of those 7 to carry an action. So it becomes a little bit more difficult. It's one thing to get 5 out of 9 members voting for something. It can be a little harder to get 5 out of 7 sometimes. So there may be some limitations on the council until you get that. But, that's just a matter of dealing with based on issues that get before you.
You've had that happen.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Sure.
Not a new problem, just want to be aware of that.
So I would make a motion to postpone the decision until after the first of the year when the new council takes their seat.
Is there a second?
I'll second
Then seconded by Councilor Woods, Mayor-elect Councilor Woods. Any discussion? Hearing none, all signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Opposed, same. Motion carries unanimously. And the new council will take this up in January.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is found on page 45 of your packet, and it's the topic is the League of Oregon Cities and Oregon Mayors Association request for support regarding a legislative funding proposal to address homelessness locally. There's an attached letter which is found on page 47 and 48. And that is from the Oregon Mayors Association. They kind of outline the process they went through starting earlier this year in May. They assembled 25 mayors from across the state in a homelessness task force, really to decide how, we all struggle in our communities, and people in our communities are struggling with, being unhoused and the challenges that are associated with that. And so what the Oregon Mayors Association came up with was a legislative ask. There's actually 2 asks, both financial. The first is an annual stipend, if you will, for each city across the state that equates to $40 per resident. And so that number for the city of Dallas is just under $700,000, $692,800. And so statewide, it's about $123 million in change, I believe, on an annual basis. And so that's the first request, and that money could be used on to address the homelessness response, either in response or as a prevention to those that may fall into homelessness. Other than that, there's not strings that the Oregon Mayors Association has attached to that money. Now, I want to note that this is just a legislative concept at this point. In fact, I don't even think it's a concept. It's just a proposal from the Oregon Mayors Association. It would have to go through the legislative process of creating a bill and then getting adopted by the state. The state could, attach certain rules and requirements to that funding if they move forward with that. The second proposal is a capital request. And so that is asking just for a certain amount of money. It would be one-time funding to address any capital needs that communities might have with respect to addressing homelessness. That can be used for the development of shelters, warming centers, cooling centers, affordable housing projects that a community might have, as transitional housing projects, other things of that nature. So I mentioned in my staff report that as of today, or as of when I wrote the report, there's been not a lot of conversations at the council level regarding any of those types of projects. After I wrote this report, you have all appointed me to sit on the Polk County Homelessness Advisory Committee. We met on Thursday last week, and while there is a project that's ongoing right now in the city of Dallas with the Dallas Alliance Church. They are utilizing their accessory building. It's this old schoolhouse building called Ettinger Hall. They're converting that from the school building into a single family residence. That property is zoned RL, so that would be a permitted outright use. And that would be used as transitional housing for one family at a time. So a family that's experiencing homelessness would be able to be located in that home until they're able to stabilize their life and find permanent supported housing. Once that happened, they transitioned away from that house, they would bring in another family, and so on and so forth. And so they're moving forward with that project right now. We've been working with them at the staff level to make sure that all of the code requirements, both planning and building, are met for that proposal. And then they just received word from the United Way of the Mid-Willamette Valley, who's going to provide some funding to them to be able to outfit the house with beds and things of that nature, curtains and other things. And so that's a project that's not, I don't believe, a need for capital dollars from the city of Dallas. However, the United Way is also looking at a project that they're doing in the city of Salem that they hope can be replicated in other communities that they talked about when I was at that work group meeting. And the Dallas Alliance Church could provide an opportunity for a replication of that project that they're doing in Salem. So I'll describe that project as well. And so it is an affordable housing project where they would build small houses, 400 square feet. Those houses would have all the necessities of a standard home. So you'd have kitchen facilities, bathrooms, living area, sleeping area, stuff of that nature. It's designed specifically for people 55 years and older. It would be a for rent house. And so again, affordable housing. They would try to cap the rent at $500 per month. And they're building these cottages in like a cottage cluster. So it would be a small development of between 5 to 15 to 20 of these houses together is what they're proposing in Salem. I think Salem has 2 or 3 sites where they're looking at doing this. So my understanding from the United Way is that they now have funding to be able to move forward with those projects in Salem. They've not yet been built, but they have renderings of what it would look like and some site plans of the layouts and whatnot. So as that relates to Dallas, and again, these conversations are really early, but the Dallas Alliance Church has 2 to 3 acres of property that's undeveloped to the south of their church off of Ellendale and Loch Riel. And they're interested in pursuing a project like that. Would probably require additional partnerships, probably with like Polk Community Development Corporation. But that could be a potential project that the city of Dallas could request funding from if you so choose. I asked just preliminary, how much these units cost, so I can get my head around a number. It's about $100,000 per unit, fully constructed and outfitted. So I would, if you want to put in a funding request for capital for that particular project, I would recommend the city council look at a number between $4 and $5 million to be able to construct that. And so you can always do that. Again, both these are legislative proposals. They're not even concepts at this point at the legislature. And so there's no commitments or assurances that any of the funding proposals would be approved. But like my wife says, if you don't ask, you won't receive anything. So I think that's kind of where I'll stop and allow discussion to occur, Mayor. So
Comments, questions about this? Ken.
Ryan, can you tell us what kind of homelessness problem the city of Dallas has? I don't see very much. Maybe I'm blinders on. Can you tell us what the problem is here?
So I think there are a few challenges that we have in our community. One, there are homeless people that live in our community. We know that. They come from a variety of sources and circumstances. Some come out of the jail system and have probation officers and others, and they are in our area. And as they come out of the incarceration in that system, they need to take time to get back on their feet. So we do find some through that way. We find some who through circumstances of mental illness or others find themselves not being able to stay in their homes. We find some who lose jobs and are not able to stay in their homes. They're not able to pay their rent and stuff like that. So in working with the Polk County Family Community Outreach, they can provide the real life stories, but those are all examples of stories that I've heard of people in Dallas who are experiencing homelessness.
Do you have any numbers like tonight, how many people are homeless? Do you have any numbers like as 5 or 10 or?
So that's a really good question. When we do a point in time count, that's done once a year. And those counts are done for some federal funding opportunities with homelessness from the Housing and Urban Development Department. And so that count's done in January, I believe, of each year, February. So the data we have on that is about a year old. That count is coming back up. So I could give you a more realistic number of that coming up. And I have some notes, but I'm not recall of what last year's were, but I'm not recalling that off the top of my head. So I can follow up with you on what it was from last year.
And for the purpose of homelessness, it's not just people camping on the street, it's also people sleeping in their cars.
Correct.
And we know that we have those from the code enforcement section of the city.
Yeah, and I would say that sleeping in cars, RVs that are in town, we experience that quite frequently with RVs. But we get, I would say, if I were to kind of scope the problem, we get a complaint regarding homelessness or homelessness activities daily in Dallas, either through code services or the police department.
Brian just answered what I was gonna.
Yeah.
So on this attachment B, it says that there'll be a communication specialist that'll work directly with interested cities to develop a one-page document that outlines the city's unique experience with homelessness and how the funding proposed would help the city to respond to or even prevent homelessness in their community. What would our list look like, and how is our homeless problem unique?
Yeah, that's again another good question. I think our list will be dependent upon what the council decides you'd like to do. If you want to request the capital funding, then that would be added to your list. I think there are certain things that we do today in response to homelessness that you could add to that list from a regulatory side. I also think that there's things that you could do with the first tranche of money, I would call it, the first proposal, which is development of a program to assist those that have needs, whether it's through utility relief, both city utilities or otherwise, through the power bills and other things like that, and gas bills. You could provide a rental assistance program locally to be able to help people who need help with their rent or even their mortgages. So there's a variety of things that you could do, but that would be subject to what the council would want us to want developed with that money.
Right. One other element to be aware of this is that in the Ninth Circuit, the Ninth Federal Court Circuit, which is what Oregon is part of, we have a case that applies to the states in the Ninth Circuit that basically says that municipal governments cannot cite people for camping on sidewalks and other public rights of way and enforce any kind of an anti-camping ordinance unless there is a sufficient number of shelter beds in the city for each of the homeless people in that community. So that's a limitation on our ability just to do it by way of enforcement and citation and telling people to move on down the street.
Yeah, and I would just add to that for your question there, if I can, Mayor, that when I talk about utilizing funds for, enforcement, it would be things like abandoned vehicles, RVs. There's a cost associated with disposing of those, and so you could utilize money for the cleanup of that. Oftentimes, when there is a homeless encampment that is posted for them to those living there to move to a different location. Oftentimes we have to clean up material behind. So money could be used to help with that cleanup as well.
So as your homeless population expands, so goes
Yes.
the shelters.
Yes. In the Ninth Circuit.
The second portion of your program with Dallas Alliance, I would assume that Dallas Alliance would be the one giving, it'd be probably run by Polk County Community Development. Is that correct?
Yeah, I
Or
don't think,
something like that?
and again, these are very preliminary conversations. The conversation that I have been a party to with the Dallas Alliance Church was that they want to do something with their land to benefit, their brothers and sisters in Christ. And so that's, they see that as an opportunity to help, those that are struggling and in need. I don't think that they are concerned, or at least they've not expressed a concern with receiving compensation for the land or any continued benefit in terms of rent or things like that. But they've floated the idea of a cottage cluster before I even met with the United Way. The United Way conversation just came up, this last week, and myself and Brent DeMoe, who were in that conversation with the Dallas Alliance Church, both looked at each other and said, the Dallas Alliance Church was just talking about something like this. There might be an opportunity to, form some partnerships. And I think Polk Community Development Corporation, who does manage affordable housing projects, in our community, would be a natural partner.
So this is a prevention, because you're talking affordable housing as far as decreased rent.
Correct. Yes,
what
this would not be, I don't envision this being, according to the United Way's model, this is not like a transitional housing facility. This is an affordable housing project with low rents that they have it structured as a 55 and older community. So to be able to serve that population.
Christian and Kim.
Well, he just answered. You just answered.
Christian.
What are the potential drawbacks of saying yes to this very loose concept? It's not even a concept yet.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a drawback to saying yes tonight. I think if you say yes tonight, it'll be important for us to track any bills that come up on this, just to make sure that we feel comfortable with whatever that bill is as it proceeds through the legislature, right? Because if all of a sudden some stuff gets inserted in there that you as a council don't feel comfortable with, you want to, submit some testimony that says, hey, this is varying, from where we wanted it to go, and we are not in favor of what you're doing. So you have the opportunity to provide that real-time testimony as the bill proceeds through the legislature. So as it's written right now, I think that it's there are not strings that say, thou shalt spend the money in this way.
Okay.
So it really gives you a wide open local control of how you spend the annual money that would come, the $692,800. And then if you were to identify a project like at the Dallas Alliance Church and say, hey, and maybe it's not that project. You might just say, hey, we want to do an affordable housing project and we need $5 million to do it. It could be as simple as that. And then once that money, if that money were to be approved and it came in, then you could open that up to the Dallas Alliance Church or anyone else to be able to develop an affordable housing project. And maybe the city just takes the lead on that. Working with Polk Community Development Corporation, we go buy some land that's available and build something there. So I don't think that even identifying a project is necessary at this time. It's just how much money do you want and what's it generally going to be used for. You could say, give me $5 million for affordable housing. And then you can decide how you're going to spend that. And if you're going to spend it, if it were to be appropriated, they could give it to you and say, yes, we're appropriating this for you. And then the city could say, yeah, we decide we're not going to use it. You don't have to take the money just because it's offered to you.
Yeah, just another point of information, really not relevant to what Brian was saying. But since I mentioned the Ninth Circuit rule, I should say, just so you know, that the number of beds available does not include housing provided by religious organizations that require participation in prayer, worship services, or other kinds of proselytization as a condition of shelter. So if you have 50 beds that are operated by a religious institution, and it means gathering at the dining table every night, and everyone has to join in, say a prayer or to listen to a homily as a condition of their staying there, that those beds don't count in the available beds. That again is Ninth Circuit. There's a Boise case that started that rule, and we very recently had the case out of Grants Pass.
We'll be seeing more of this, I suppose. You need guidance.
So,
on that,
yeah, so I
or-
need guidance today. The League of Oregon Cities would like to know whether or not the city of Dallas supports this by the 23rd, so by Wednesday of this week. So, I'm looking for a motion. I think there's a recommended motion on page
It's,
46.
Yeah, so
I-
if I'm seeing some head nods here, I entertain, say again?
I was just nodding my head, it wasn't.
Yeah, I entertain a motion to the city of Dallas to support the two legislative budget proposals outlined in the Oregon Mayor Association, October 18, 2022 letter. Would someone like to make that motion?
I just have a quick question. If we agree to this tonight, this does not put any obligation on future councils?
No, because the future council, again, even if
Next
the,
year,
what's that?
yeah, next year.
Well-
Before the 2023 legislative session.
Right. I mean, so,
And you haven't seen the bill, so
right.
until you've seen the bill, you're really not moving anything. except
Yeah,
a
you're not,
Preliminary concept.
yeah, you're not supporting the bills that may come from
So
this.
this council can change their mind next
Yes.
year.
Correct.
Sure.
Okay. So
No, not this council,
We-
the next one.
We have a motion on the floor, waiting for a second.
I was gonna just ask a question.
Who made the
who
motion?
made the motion?
I thought you did.
No, he just asked the question.
Oh, all right. There's no motion. All right,
So she can.
I was gonna ask a question.
all right. So we're
So-
back in discussion again.
Yeah, discussion. So, but I would remind you that the $1 million ask for the counties was just kind of a proposal too, but once it hit, it was supposed to steam ahead with that as well. So you ask for the money, you get approved, and it just goes, right? So.
And I'll add to that, the council also had the opportunity to review the intergovernmental agreement. So you've had opportunities along the way to say, pump the brakes, we're not comfortable moving forward with this. And that would be the same with any legislative approval here, just because the legislature says, hey, we want to give you money. You as a council need to accept that money, appropriate it through the budget process, and have opportunities to say no all along the way.
I just like to say, I think I'm tracking with a couple of other counselors here. I'd like to have a better handle on how big this problem is
Mhm.
before we just start throwing numbers at it. But at the same time, give you a green light to pursue the funding, knowing that we'd like to have more information down the road before we actually start implementing programs to help this population. I think we're all in agreement to help them. Just don't know how big it is or what it is.
Well, even if we don't get funding, we need to know that
And
information.
I would also caution accepting funding from the state and working for the state is like a deal with the devil sometimes. So let's make sure we know what we're obligated ourselves for, which you've already said.
So would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right.
I move that the city of Dallas support the two legislative budget proposals as outlined in the Oregon Mayors Association's October 18th, 2022 letter.
Okay, looking for a second? Second? Seconded by Larry. Let's do a roll call on this. I'm not sensing complete enthusiasm.
So Mayor, just before we get to the second, I want to make sure that as it's outlined in the letter, does not have any special capital funding for Dallas.
Right.
Right, so
Okay.
it's just the funding that Dallas would receive as part of this would just be the annual funding proposal of $692,800 per year. And there would be no capital funding. That's part of the motion.
Is that understood?
Are you breaking it in half then, the 1 and the 2?
No, what I'm saying is that the proposal as is outlined in the letter from the Oregon Mayors Association, they had 2 funding sources. But you as a council have, if by this motion, you're only approving really the first option in the Oregon Mayor's letter, because you've not told me how much money you want to put towards a capital project.
Okay,
So-
that kind of throws a wrench because it's got, the motion is for the 2 legislative.
Right, and there are 2 legislative proposals, but unless you tell me how much money you want me to tell the league to give us in capital, because that conversation is not gonna have yet.
Yeah.
Can we do this in 2 pieces? Is that
can,
possible
yeah.
to do it in 2
Alright.
pieces?
Yeah.
Can we split the motion? Can we withdraw the motion and rephrase it? Is there the second and the mover agree to that? Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll start again let's start with the League of Oregon Mayor Association proposal for the
The annual contribution.
692,800 is the estimate. Is that understood? You modify the motion we're going to talk about just approving the first of the 2 both proposals.
Yeah, which is the $40 per resident.
$40 per resident. And again, with the provisions that the city manager talked about, we're not obligating ourselves at this point to a full program until it comes down to more discussion. Yeah, sure.
But those funds can also be used for capital improvements and construction. right?
Yes.
So those could go for that, they could go for affordable housing, shelters, transitional housing.
So the new motion is for the first legislative budget proposal for the $40 per head.
Correct.
Is that
So I
correct?
move that.
Otherwise okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Otherwise, it's exactly the same. the motion.
Right. So I move that the council agree to, what am I?
Yeah, support the first
Supports.
legislative budget proposal as outlined in the Oregon Mayors Association.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
What he said.
Okay, good. And it's seconded by Larry. All right. Any further discussion on this particular? motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Aye. There's one. This bill is against that. It passes. 5, 6. All right, so on to the second proposal. What do you need from us?
So
to
I
discuss
would
that?
simply have a motion that says, I move the city of Dallas support the second legislative budget proposal as outlined in the Oregon Mayors Association letter, and direct the city manager to include a fill in the blank amount for
Let's
capital,
talk
for
about that
for
amount
capital
before we
projects.
get the motion then. The amount.
So what I think I'm hearing from the rest of the council though is the coming up with the amount hinges on the knowing the numbers. So if we have 10 homeless, if we have 10 residents of Dallas who are houseless, that's very different than if we have 100 residents of Dallas who are houseless.
Let me ask this, is there is a deadline on?
Yes, Thursday.
Yeah,
The
this
23rd.
one,
Remind us of the deadline.
this Wednesday.
Wednesday. So if we don't act today, we might miss the deadline.
Well,
Mhm.
We know of a project that is out there, and the project, from what I understand, is land is being donated, more than likely is what's going on. It's a really rough, loosey thing, and the project might change, but we have land that's being given. A development company, a nonprofit in the Polk County Community Development that would oversee the rental portion of it and the building and construction of it, if they so agree. And the amount that that Brian came up with during this discussion was 5 million, which is a little bit padded over the 4 million, but we know what costs of construction are. And so it would not be, as Lane was talking, I don't believe this is a religious.
okay,
I don't think there's any conflict as far as that goes.
So
I have a question. So if we agree to support the second proposal in the mayor's association letter, and we throw out the 5 million, and then it comes around and we have 10 residents of Dallas who experience houselessness, and the 5 million is overshot, we can then come back, this should be a question, can we then come back and say, we don't need 5 million, we need 3?
Sure.
The answer is yes. Go ahead.
No, I don't think I caught what he said about can you use these monies to help the church? in their
It's not going
construction?
to be a church. The church is donating the property to Polk County Community Development.
So then they do count.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
as long as there's not some
But-
programmatic element.
But this is not housing for homeless.
Yeah, and
I've
this
gotta
would, and this would
bring
not
this up.
be,
This is for affordable housing is what they're doing.
Yeah,
So it's a,
sure.
it's a prevention.
A
measure.
church can do this. It's just,
Correct.
they have to limit their program to housing only.
yeah, and I would say that the shelter discussion that Lane had on the Boise decision relates to shelters, not affordable housing, right? And so these beds don't count
Gotta be
towards
something you can take
what
the
Lane's
person
talking about.
Yeah.
Larry.
And as I read this, it's for capital improvements only. It wouldn't support hiring community police officers or
Not for the cap.
Not for the capital request. Your other funding that you already approved, that would.
Good. Kirsten.
Just gonna say it, and then as I was raising my hand, Brian said it. But I want to add one other thing, that yes, a house of worship could choose to partner, and yes, they could offer a voluntary support from whatever the house of worship offers. It just cannot be a requirement. That is the very clear piece. It cannot be a requirement. And anytime that it's and I'll use your term, a programmatic requirement, we cannot,
Yeah, and that's again, for shelter beds. That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the capital project that we're discussing in concept is not a shelter. It would be affordable housing. And so none of those housing units would apply towards the shelter requirement to satisfy the Boise decision to regulate camping in your community. That would be a completely different project that's designed specifically as a shelter use.
Go ahead.
However, this imaginary idea, right? Because it's still very, yes, could, even if it doesn't change, so long as there's not a programmatic requirement, it would be able to be funded partially or in whole by the second proposal in the mayor's letter.
Yes, there's no requirement or prohibition as it's outlined in the mayor's association letter on those capital projects. So that could be used to support an affordable housing project that's owned and managed by a house of worship.
One more thing.
Depending on the
Or
draft
not.
legislation.
Right,
Correct.
but we don't know what that looks like yet.
We
But
do
I'm just saying,
not know.
according to the letter,
This is just.
it's wide open, right?
Establishing the
But
principle.
are we really having a discussion here about how to keep people from establishing camps? Or are we having a discussion around whether or not this concept is the right concept for us to consider moving forward, knowing that at any point we can say, thanks, this isn't for us after all?
Can we have Lane
Yeah.
talk a little more?
Well, yeah, well, that's a good question. Is this for housing development? So it's not for shelter beds. It wouldn't count if they develop it toward that number of available beds, except to the extent that if you have affordable housing, you may pull some people off the street and into this affordable housing that wasn't available to them before. So there may be some interact. And I've lost the thread of my answer.
That's okay.
Yeah, so the capital project, we're talking about the concept of affordable housing at the Dallas Lions Church is not a shelter.
Correct.
It is affordable housing. And the Ninth Circuit Court's decision relates and pertains to shelter beds. And so, no, the capital project you're talking about tonight does not relate to camping and the regulation of camping within the city limits of Dallas.
Okay. Bill.
Where's the money coming?
From the state.
And who pays the money to the state?
Yeah, taxpayers
And
Exactly.
lottery
So-
players.
and lottery players.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's nice to say we want to help people and we want to give them all this money, but I mean, it's like our balanced budget within the city. If the state's gonna balance their budget, they're getting a little carried away about how much money they're giving out to every entity.
Larry,
I would just make a comment that the state's gonna give this money away
Right.
regardless. And we're gonna give a lot of it away. So we either get in line and make a deal with the devil or we don't.
And I also see that this capital improvement's more likely to be funded than the ongoing forever by the state, just watching how the state reacts. They have a pool of money right now that's readily available. That's why I'm in support of the 5 million.
you want to make a motion then?
So moved.
It's
I'll
been
second.
moved With the,
I have a-
and this is on this.
Yeah, I asked our chief a question is if we had transitional housing available where he could enforce this, would it make a difference?
We had enough transitional housing, enough shelters
If we were legally compliant,
with the 9th Circuit decision.
correct, would that make a difference to our town?
It would,
It would.
if we comply with the 9th Circuit. That means that we could take some enforcement action or camping on public property, on the sidewalk in the park.
Well,
Did you make the motion
no,
or not?
I'll read
Why don't you
an
read it,
actual
and then we'll look for a
motion.
second, and then we can have further discussion.
I move
How's that?
the city of Dallas
Support.
support the second legislative budget proposal as outlined in the Oregon Mayor's Association letter and direct the city manager to include a $5 million capital construction request.
I'll,
Okay.
I'll second.
And it's moved in second, now discussion. We're talking about 5 million now. Again, this is in principle. This is not an
Right.
application for $5 million for a legislative package that's already been passed, correct?
Correct.
And
Don't go past.
And with that, this is the project we have in mind, and that's how we got the 5 million. That doesn't mean it has to go on that piece of property. And it doesn't mean that it couldn't be the beds that we just talked about
This is in
somewhere
principle.
else. It's just in principle and it's a
Everybody understand? Any further discussion? Hearing none, secretary call the roll.
Council President Schilling,
yes.
Councilor Briggs,
Yes.
Councilor Collins,
Yes.
Councilor Crawford,
Yes.
Councilor Fitzgerald,
No.
Councilor Hahn,
No,
Councilor Woods.
Yes.
It passes 5-2.
That's-
5 is sufficient for it to pass.
That's correct. Mayor, if you will, I have there's a little bit of confusion on the previous vote. So I had Council President Schilling in favor, Councilor Briggs in favor, Councilor Collins in favor, Councilor Crawford in favor. I did not hear an opposing vote from Councilor Fitzgerald. Do you want to clarify your vote? So you were opposed on that vote, okay? And then there was an opposed vote by Councilor Hahn, and Councilor Woods was in favor.
Okay, so 5-2.
Yes,
So 5-2.
I just wanted to make sure I got an accurate
Okay, good.
vote.
I'm sorry, I missed that. You should have corrected me. I sometimes make errors. believe it or not. All right. So is that what you need from
That's
that?
what I need. That
More than
conversation
you needed.
is completed. So the next item that we have for discussion tonight is the Aaron Mercer Dam Seismic Analysis Intergovernmental Agreement. And our Public Works Director, Gary Marks, is here to talk about that. You're off
you're
now.
off now.
Turn it, you're off now. Press it one more time. Nope, press it again.
Hold it.
There you go. You're good.
Can you hear me now? Mayor Dalton, members of the council, always a pleasure to present to you. You have my staff report in your packet. My report tonight is fairly straightforward. The Department of Oregon Water Resources wishes to give the city $85,500 to conduct a seismic study of Mercer Dam. Seems that when the dam was built in 1959, and then subsequently raised in 1972. That at neither of those times was a seismic study done. There is no record of any seismic work being done since then. And so the state would like us to do that. Usually when the state asks us to do something, we have to pay for it. I was surprised in my discussions with folks at the state when they decided to tell me they were going to pay for it. So you might ask, why do they want to do this now? They are working with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and with us to improve downstream fish passage coming out of the Mercer Dam compound. Right now, when fish try to migrate out of the lake or out of the pool, they go over the dam and they end up hitting the concrete below. It's kind of like us going up the top of the building and jumping off so we can get to the sidewalk below. We don't end up in a very good condition when we do that. So the idea is to build what loosely is called a fish pillow, which is a small pool at the bottom of the dam filled with water that when the fish go over the top of the dam, they go in and they splash into the pool. But to do that, the engineers at the Dam Safety Division of Oregon Water Resources needs to know what the effects of seismic activity might be to the structure of the dam that exists now if you create this fish pillow. So now there's an additional benefit to us as we launch into the development of plans and specifications for our new expanded Mercer raw water dam complex. We will need to do this exact same study. Having the state pay for it now, it will be directly applicable to our work. So it is actually to our benefit that we take them up on this deal. So my recommendation to you tonight is on the second page of my staff report, basically that you authorize the city manager to sign the intergovernmental agreement that is in the packet, that we conduct this seismic study with money provided to us by the Oregon Department of Water Resources. If you have questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Are we conducting this ourselves or are we subcontracting all this?
We will manage the project. We will have a contracted engineering firm do this. The state's made it clear they want Jacobs to do it. They've been working with Jacobs to develop the scope of work and the cost estimate. So I foresee that we'd be contracting with Jacobs to do the work.
Does the state indicate that directly?
Pardon me?
Does the state indicate directly to hire Jacobs?
Well, did they say that? Well, yeah, I think they did at one point. It would cost much more to ask a different firm at this point, because there's no, they don't have the background and the depth of knowledge of the dam and all of the discussions that have gone on to get to this point. So I believe under ORS 279, one of those sections in that case, when the engineering firm is specially qualified based on past work, that a direct appointment can be made. So I think we'd be operating under that part of the ORS.
CH2M designed the original dam, 1959.
They did.
So they've been at this for a long, long time.
Right.
Okay, I see probable head nods here, so I would entertain a motion to authorize city manager to sign an intergovernmental agreement, WRD 22048, with the Oregon Department of Water Resources to conduct seismic analysis of Air Mercer Dam.
So
been moved by Councilor Woods and seconded by Michael. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same. Good.
Thank
We'll
you.
take the city, the county's, no, the
state.
state's money. We'll take everybody's money. Frankly.
Hopefully we can continue that pattern of taking the state's money.
Correct.
They're now doing
Keep
this
giving it to
and the
us.
transportation system plan. Take it for things that we need to get done anyway. Two more just quick items that aren't on the agenda. The Youth Advisory Committee and Council that you asked me to form We're currently advertising for that. For those, the youth to sign up for that. It's on our website. I spoke with the civics teacher at the high school today. He's going to start advertising that there. The school district is also putting up posters and other things and directing kids there. We put a press release in the paper, which should come out hopefully tomorrow. So we're communicating that out to the public to join the Youth Advisory Council. First meeting will start in January. So the youth can apply through the end of December. I think December 30th was the deadline for that. And then finally, Christmas light displays are going up starting this Saturday. So if you are available and you want to volunteer to put Christmas lights up at the park, Dallas City Park, the old side, which is off of Allgood Academy, at 9 a.m. We should be done within an hour and a half, so you can get home and watch the Oregon State football game, which starts at 12:30. So as long as enough of us show up, we'll get it done quickly and we can get Charlie home so that he can watch the game. All right, that's all I had, Mayor.
All right, thanks very much. On to our ordinances. So we have two first readings tonight. First one you'll find on page 64. It's an ordinance numbered 1881, an ordinance amending Dallas City Code Section 2.362 relating to public contracts. And you have heard the first reading of it. Any discussion of that? Very well. I declare ordinance number 1881 to have passed its first reading on to 1882, an ordinance declaring 1.11 acres more or less of territory being tax lot 111 on Polk County Assessor's Map 7528 D0700 annexed to the city of Dallas and withdrawn from Southwest Polk County Rural Fire Protection District and designating the zoning of said property as general commercial. Any discussion of that? Hearing none, I declare ordinance 1882 to have passed its first reading. Before we have other business, I'll remind you all not to jump up and leave because we have an ordinance, a meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency scheduled after this meeting adjourned. Any other business come for the council this evening?
No.
First reading.
These are first readings in both those. Okay, any other business? Very well, I declare this meeting to adjourn and I call into session the City of Dallas Urban Renewal Agency Board of Directors. Do you have a roll call? Are you happy with the roll call?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, good. The first order of business is to approve the minutes of the September 6, 2022 Urban Renewal Agency Board of Directors meeting. You'll find it on page 2. Anybody wish to withdraw anything from that? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve, made by Larry, seconded by Kim. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries unanimously. On we go to resolution UR 2022-02, a resolution establishing the South Dallas Urban Renewal District Advisory Committee and adopting the rules for the governance thereof. You'll find that on page 3. Any discussion of that? Any discussion of that?
So
Ryan.
I'll just add a little bit to that. And so what we're recommending is to have the South Dallas Urban Renewal District Advisory Committee to be the Economic Development Commission, which is a current advisory body that you have, that the city of Dallas has. They focus on industrial land development. And so it just made sense because this urban renewal district covers a lot of that industrial land to have them function in this capacity as opposed to having our current downtown urban renewal district advisory committee fulfill that same role because they're focused more on downtown commercial and retail development. So you'll have 2 different advisory committees for urban renewal, one for the downtown district and then a separate one for the South Dallas district, which is composed predominantly again of industrial land. And that body will be your Economic Development Commission.
And otherwise, except for the designation of the Economic Development Commission as the ERDAC for the South Dallas district, these are basically the same as the current ERDAC rules. So,
Okay.
ones that we're familiar with.
So what would their name be?
South Dallas Urban Renewal District Advisory Committee. South Dallas ERDAC. Or you can say Durdak. Feel like that. Durdak.
Sturdak.
Dual hatted. Okay, and the group agrees to that too. They like the idea, so.
Who's currently on that?
So Charlie can probably recite the members better than I can, but it includes Commissioner Pope, Rita Grady, Eric Anderson, Bob Tucker. Is Gerald Gravelin still on there? Gerard just recently resigned. That's correct. Brandon Schmidt-Gall with the hospital. And I said Bob Tucker. I think that's Ellen Peter Cairns, who is the property manager for the mill site.
Okay, any further?
So we have one vacancy on that commission, which hopefully will be filled soon.
So they'll have full authority to allocate and distribute funds?
No, they're an advisory committee.
Just like our
Yes. So they will still advise the council, which is the agency who appropriates the budget, makes purchasing decisions, stuff of that nature.
Any further questions? Very well, you've heard the reading of the resolutions. No further discussion. Secretary will call the roll.
Council President Schilling,
Yes.
Counselor Briggs, Counselor Collins,
Yes.
Counselor Crawford,
Yes.
Counselor Fitzgerald, Counselor Hahn,
Yes.
and Counselor Woods.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very well, thank you. I declare resolution 2022-02 to have passed by unanimous vote. Anything else to come before the agency this evening? Hearing nothing, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.